All right, coming up next, we've got a very special interview for you. It's with the marathon runner Rory Linkletter. He's Canadian-American. He was born in Canada, lives in the United States, trains in Flagstaff, Arizona, went to BYU, and he is, quite simply put, one of the most intriguing figures in the distance running scene, really globally right now. He had a huge breakthrough at the Boston Marathon this spring. He placed sixth overall. He ran 2:07:02 and had this like commanding presence on Boylston Street in the final straight stretch. He is sponsored by Puma. So he had a lot to say about what it's like to be working with a brand that's trying to build leading edge technology. And also, he started his own YouTube channel. So he like documents the nitty gritty of his everyday life. He's got two very young kids. And he and his wife have just allowed a video team to follow them around and film everything. And so we talked about what it's like to have to put yourself in the spotlight in this degree in the social media age, what it's like to build a brand as an athlete, the business of being an elite athlete. And then also, he's running the Chicago Marathon this coming weekend, the reason why we're talking with him. And he made a very bold, very public proclamation that he is going to go after not just the Canadian record, but the North American marathon record, which is 2:05:36. He's going to go after it in Chicago. He's going to be in tough because he's going to be racing against a friend, a former teammate at BYU in Connor Mance, who is also running Chicago. They will be running stride for stride, no doubt, throughout the Chicago Marathon. So that's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch in Chicago. Roy's a really articulate guy, really interesting guy, fun guy to hang out with. He had some pretty strong opinions about things like the Grand Slam Track League and about what we should do about the doping crisis and distance running right now. Incredible conversation. And here it is, my conversation with Rory Linkletter. All right, Rory Linkletter. We are talking to you right now. It's the middle of the daytime. You're in Flagstaff, Arizona. And just before we hit record, you said, the only thing that could interrupt this podcast right now is if my children show up and then all hell breaks loose. Let's talk about your day. Let's talk about your life. Before we get into, training details, that sort of thing, I guess this will come up in the conversation, but like, where are we at right now in terms of like a day in the life of Rory Linkletter? How do you structure it? What's it like?
Okay, yeah, so I'll just run you through like what today's gonna look like because today's just another normal Monday for me. I woke up. Monday's one of the days that I let myself sleep in because I basically don't set an alarm on easy running days. So I sleep as long
Hmm.
as my body or my kids or my household, whatever allows me to. Today was a good day. I almost made it to 7. That's definitely
Nice.
like a sleep in day for me. So woke up, got coffee, hung out with the kids for a little bit. I like to have slow mornings, but I had to get out the door a little bit quicker than normal just because I knew we were about to hop on this podcast because it was originally going to be a 10 a.m.er for me here. Um, but anyways, I got 90 minutes in this morning, got some food in me, and then it's quiet in the house right now. The kids are gone usually in the late morning. My wife either takes them out and does something fun, like whether it's like a mommy and me class or something. It's always, go, go, go around here in the late morning. And then the chaos continues around lunchtime when the kids come home. And yeah, it's basically being a professional runner. I get to spend a lot of time with my kids between all the comings and goings. And I'll head out for a second run. I run 2 times a day, pretty much every day, except for on the weekends. Those are usually singles, but Monday through Friday always doubles. So go out for another run, do some drills and strides, get ready for my session tomorrow, have dinner with the family, put the kids to bed, hang out with my wife for an hour, and then go to bed and do it all over again the next day. So it is very rinse repeat. It is very cyclical. Workout days can be a bit different, but yeah, easy running days are kind of rinse repeat.
And how long have you been in Flagstaff now? Because obviously Flagstaff, for those who are unfamiliar, is kind of one of the epicenters of distance running in the world, really, not just in the United States or Canada. It
Yeah.
is kind of one of the true meccas of distance running. It's at altitude. It's a great running environment. There's an incredible culture there. How long have you been there for, and what's it been like?
Yeah, I've been here 6 years, just over six. I hit my 6 years of living here in July this year, so a couple months past that. And yeah, I mean, to speak to the epicenter, I think over 30 Olympians called Flagstaff home for the last Olympics. And obviously, most of those aren't US Olympians because there's not
Yeah.
that many spots even on the US Olympic distance team. But in a town of 75,000 people, 80,000 plus students or whatever it is, uh, there's a lot of professional runners here, a lot of high level runners, and it's really just a really, really awesome, fun spot to live and train. The weather's pretty good year round. We are fortunate enough to have all 4 seasons, but none of them be overly oppressive. Like our summers are fairly mild, our winters are trainable, and we get a fall and a spring. So I think it's just with the altitude and the weather, it's pretty perfect mix, and we have access to more like Forest Service roads and dirt roads and open running than most places would have or that I've ever been to have.
Now, 2025 so far has been a dramatic and super positive year for you. You had say a pretty sizable breakthrough in Boston. Overall performance was so strong. We were there in Boston, at the finish line, watching you come in looking amazing and running a wonderful time. 2:07:02 is it's your personal best overall, I believe, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. Which is tricky for anyone who's run Boston. Boston is like it's a puzzle, right? It's more than just a straight time trial. You've got the Newton Hills. There's not a flat section of that entire course. It's point to point. Weather can be a real challenge at times. I want to get into talking about how it is you executed such a brilliant run in Boston. But before that, I want to talk about goal setting and planning. Do you, at the beginning of a year, say 2025, coming out of an Olympic year last year, you've got it wide open in 2025. How do you plan to decide the race to do the races that you do? In this case, you're in Boston, you do in Chicago in the fall. You've opted not to do the World Championships. How do you make those decisions? Walk me through a little bit of that thinking this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's like really two main things that go into every decision I make as a runner. And I will just be very blunt and just say number one is usually money. Like,
Yep.
where can I make money? Because this is my profession. I just told you I have a family, and I am the sole provider for my family. So I'm trying to make decisions that are financially sound. And number two would be motivation, because I'm not going to run well if isn't something that absolutely gets me out of bed every morning, excited to train, excited to put in the work. Marathon training is gruesome, it's brutal, it's tough, and motivation has to be extremely high, and your goals have to be very clear in order to keep you on the straight and narrow throughout the block. So yeah, I basically, coming out of the Olympic year, Boston made a ton of sense because I kind of foregoed the marathon major route for a couple of years because of my pursuit for the Olympic team. Not all those races are conducive to qualifying for the Olympics, so had to give up a little bit to get a little bit here and there. Making the Olympic team was definitely the priority in 24, which made it the priority kind of in 2023 and 2024. So to make a long story short, Boston is one of the best professionally ran races in the world from like so many different perspectives. It is just as much how big it is for the average runner as how big it is for the professionals. They treat us
Mm.
really well. They take great care of us. It is the Mecca. It is, if not the largest marathon in the world, definitely a top three one. And so with that comes great exposure for brands. So your sponsors are going to care a lot about Boston. And it's just a big stage. It's really cool. So that was how I chose Boston, and I chose Ottawa as well, which I'll touch over
Yeah.
again. Just like kind of being greedy a little bit. Like I wanted to do that race, and I was like, I think I could do it. And again, it's another financial opportunity, go to another race, make a little bit more money. And I believed in my ability to come back from Boston and run a good race in Ottawa. And I'm really glad I did it, because it was a really cool accomplishment to put together two of my best marathons ever back to back, just like that. And then the decision to not do Worlds was kind of forced due to the fact that I chose to be so crazy this spring. I basically had to choose, like, I can only do one race this fall. I'm not going to do 4 marathons this year. I'm not going to set the precedent of always running 2. So then it's like, okay, Tokyo's going to be hot, humid, yucky. The opportunities are pretty, like, if I don't medal from an opportunity standpoint, it's like super high risk, super low reward. Basically, the only way Tokyo would have been like a really, really awesome opportunity for me is to contend for a medal, which, sure, that would have been a valiant goal, but that going into a race with a boom or bust mentality like that is pretty scary.
Yeah.
I chose Chicago because it had a few things going for it. It's fast. I want to run really, really fast. I feel ready to run really, really fast. It's another major, and it's another one of those, races that has a variety of outcomes that could lead to a really positive day for me.
Did you know when you decided to do Chicago that Connor Mance was also going to be running?
Yes. So we're good friends, and it seemed obvious to me that he was going to go to Chicago because he's an American, he's a Nike athlete, it's an American major, it's a Nike sponsored event, and he wants that American record. So it seemed like a perfect storm.
We'll get into that in a second, because you've made some bold declarations yourself, and I imagine the two of you, no doubt, will be pacing things out together in Chicago. I want to pick your brain a little bit about that in a minute, but first, let's go back to Boston for a second here. I think if you've never run the Boston Marathon before, it's hard to describe how complex a race and how different a marathon it is than your Chicago, than your Valencia, races that are a little bit flatter, a little bit more forgiving, a bit more of a time trial. And Boston also, from an elite standpoint, no pacers, championship style racing. So you're at the mercy of whomever is at the front and whoever's setting the pace. And oftentimes that is some of the best runners in the world, like John Career, who on paper are a couple minutes faster than you. How is it? So rewinding all the way back, you decide to do Boston.
I did it in 2021. And when I did it in 2021, I did go out and scout it before. So I had a little bit of experience. It was the worst race of my life, 2021 Boston. Like, easily by far and away. So it's funny where I now have my best and my worst marathon run on the exact same course. So very yin and yang from the experience standpoint. And I think that that's a very fair representation of what Boston can be, which is kind of unpredictable, kind of one of those courses that if you catch lightning in a bottle, you can have an amazing day, but it'll challenge you in different ways. So if you're not having a good day, it'll bring you to your knees. So yeah, I was familiar with the race course. I feel familiar enough to know what to expect. And I was really unafraid of it because of my previous 2. So I did New York in the fall and I did Paris last summer. So like, I was just like, honestly, I was like, Boston's going to be a joke compared to that combo. Like, it's just, I've now gotten so used to hilly courses. Like, I wasn't at all afraid of Boston as a course. I knew it wasn't a time trial race, so I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to run, national records on this course because of the nature of it and the fact that you mentioned it's a championship style race. But I knew I'd have to run fast to hit my goals, which my goal I stated before the race and had that goal I'll build was top 10 in the race. And I figured I had a good shot at it, but I knew I'd have to run really, really fast and really, really brave to do so.
Yeah. What's the, from 2021 to this year, running Boston, what was the big, what's the sort of number one thing that was stuck in your mind going into this year's Boston in terms of like what you learned?
Well, when I ran it the first time, I was really inexperienced and really uncertain of myself. And when I ran it this time, I was very experienced and very certain of myself. So really it was a confidence standpoint, like two different runners stepping to the line. It was my third marathon ever when I ran it the first time, and I think it was my 10th this time, or 10th or 11th. So a lot more experience under my belt. Like I said, having done more difficult courses, like Paris was definitely a bigger bear than Boston is. It was more dynamic, more unpredictable, all over the place kind of race. I knew I could survive it. And when you get over the fact that, like, I think the biggest fear with running hard marathon courses is the fear that you can't survive and that you can't hold it together. And I've gotten pretty confident that I won't implode in marathons anymore. I've gotten enough lifetime training, enough callousing in my legs, enough skill set, enough of an understanding of the event to be like, okay, worst case scenario, I don't reach my goal, but I'm not going to die out there because I've figured out how to run these races well enough that I think I've tempered the fear side of the marathon quite a bit. Whereas going into that first Boston, I was terrified of it, and rightfully so. It absolutely ate me up.
So last January, 2 weeks before the Houston Half Marathon, my coach made me do what he called the impossible workout. 30 minutes at threshold pace, followed by 1 kilometer of kicking, even faster. All of it at half marathon pace, which for me is about 4:56 per mile.
You had to slide that one in there, didn't you, sir?
My point is that running on frozen roads near my house in Toronto to do this workout sounded daunting, and going to some gym and running on a regular treadmill sounded even worse. Luckily, Michael had a Wahoo Kicker Run treadmill stashed in his home in northern Toronto, and so I took advantage of that last winter.
So that's why you kept coming over to my house all the time.
I mean, I also came for the company.
Sure.
And mainly for the Kicker Run's Run Free mode, where the treadmill uses sensors to adjust its carpet speed so that it can respond to your running speed in real time. So it responds to you, and not the other way around. Now that was helpful for the workout's kick portion, so I could accelerate naturally without having to worry about pressing buttons all the time. The treadmill also comes with the lateral tilt feature, which will simulate the angles of running on a natural terrain. So every step is not the same, which is a good thing. And it's kind of like if you're running outdoors. And bonus, the Kicker Run connects with a laundry list of third-party apps, including Strava, the Wahoo Run app, and Zwift, so you can run free in Watopia.
It's quiet, simple, and effective. The treadmill follows you and not the other way around. It's available in the US, the UK, Germany, and Austria. And now you can get a free Headwind smart fan worth $319 when you order the Kicker Run from Wahoo Fitness using the promo code MHRUN. That's all one word, MHRUN. Take our word for it, as well as the professional athletes that use it, including ultra runner David Roche, triathlete Chelsea Sodero, Olympic gold medalist Cole Hawker.
And now, me!
Okay, let's get to the show. You mentioned earlier that World Marathon Majors was something that you sort of kept at bay for a while as you chased an Olympic dream and qualifying for an Olympics. And the Olympics, of course, is a real like push-pull entity within particularly marathon running because of this kind of like, on the one side, you've got the majors, and then you've got the Olympics every 4 years, which there's still a huge draw to running the Olympics for a lot of reasons. And some of them are indirectly financial as well. Being an Olympian is a valuable thing to a brand and for a runner for their own legacy and their own career. Once you get to the Olympics, you qualified like in a very dramatic fashion. With you ran Seville, you ran 2:08 low, like just below 01.
Yeah,
you're like 9 seconds off the qualifying cutoff was 2:08.10, I believe, going into So that's the as close as it gets to like diving across the finish line, right? Like you're a few seconds away, and then you go to the Olympics in Paris, a very hyped, very dramatic event. Paris felt really big. I'd love to hear your perspective on what it's like to actually go and run an Olympic marathon. Like, did it deliver on the hype for you? Were you Like, was it an emotionally exhausting experience? Like, what was it like? Like, walk me through actually achieving this goal and then doing the friggin' thing.
Yeah, so I'll start with qualifying because I think that's the most important thing. Obviously, like huge breakthrough, huge monkey off the back, huge step in the right direction. Just making it was just so surreal because of the fact that that standard was set at such a high level. Like I do think and the numbers back it up. They keep dwindling down the marathon field at the Olympics. They keep cutting 10 spots, 20 spots, 10 spots. Every time the Olympics comes around, they're like, how can we make this more elite, more exclusive? And this was by far the most exclusive Olympic marathon ever. It was the hardest to qualify for by far. They've dropped the previous Olympic qualifying time down by 3 minutes and 20 seconds. So that's a pretty substantial jump. And I didn't make the previous Olympics because I didn't hit the standard. So, and I was running marathons at the time. So here I am. I fell short of the standard in my first Olympic window running marathons. And then they drop it by 3 minutes and 20 seconds and I make it. So just with that caveat, I was really, really proud to be on the Olympic team. And I did not take that for granted one bit because you look across the board, how many countries failed to send 3 people, failed to send anybody in that event because of the fact that that standard is so hard, so elite. It was an absolute honor to be on that start line and to be on that Olympic team. And then once I made it, you then start to work backwards from the date and figure out how you can be competitive. And we had heard all these rumors about how big of a bear this course was going to be. You know, dramatic rumors coming out of Paris about the hills and this and that. And
The wall, yes.
Yes, and every time I heard anything, it just got bigger and bigger. And then I got out to Paris and I saw the hills, like, I think the week of the race, and they looked even bigger than I was told. And I was like, this is insane. Like, how do they, like, this is going to, people are going to die out there. And I was convinced that just running smart, I was going to place really well. Like if I could just execute a good race, I was going to place awesome. Couldn't have been more wrong. Everybody ran amazing. I ran conservative. I did not have a great day. I didn't finish like I wanted to, and I got absolutely pummeled. It was so underwhelming, so disappointing, and I left the Olympics honestly and like with my head down, like just completely disappointed, dissatisfied, and really, really struggling with the fact that I just worked my whole life for a moment, an opportunity, and I felt like I didn't take advantage of it. And there's a number of reasons why that was my experience. But at the end of the day, I left the Olympics more motivated than ever. And I feel like that's why my 2025 has been as good as it's been. Is I was so disappointed that I demanded basically I need to get to another level in this sport or else I'm going to be disappointed again.
And then you ran New York City in November.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, New York, I've run it, obviously not as an elite runner, but I think that this is kind of one of the neat things about talking to an elite runner versus being I'm a very good hack, and the experience I think for all runners is kind of universal. I mean, obviously you get to stand at the front and that's its own thing, but running New York is running New York. It's a giant race. It's a crazy race. It's wild that they can shut down the 5 boroughs for this event and everyone in New York City is into it. Was New York, was that a place where you started to kind of build from New York into this 2025? Was it a good experience for you? Was it kind of a way for you to salvage what sounds like a pretty disappointing Olympic experience?
Yeah. If the Olympics was like a C+, B- performance, which is what I would probably grade it, then I think New York was like a B+. It was a little bit better. And process-wise, I felt a lot better about what I did in New York. New York, I think I ran 25 to 30K of the race I needed to run. And then I just didn't have the legs in the last 10K, and I didn't like fall apart, but I didn't have like I was definitely holding on for dear life, trying to get to Central Park and get done with the race. But process-wise, I was in the lead group for a long time. I was a part of the race, which is a big part of my like goals as an athlete going forward, is to never be in a race that I can't be a part of, can't be competing in, can't be contending in, can't be up near the front. So it was a step forward. I was a little disappointed in what I ended up placing on that day, but I think it was just a really good year at New York. I got 15th. If I'd run a minute faster, I would have been top 10. So, and I really lost all that time in the last, 10K of the race. So it really was just like a matter of like, I was close, but not quite there. So I was a little disappointed off that. But then I think that was the final catalyst to my sit down meeting with my current coach, John Green, where I was like, I wasn't strong enough. I feel like I'm leaving a ton of meat on the bone here in training. Like, I just think I'm not taking advantage of the skill sets I have as an athlete. I'm training hard, but not hard enough. Like I can do so much more. And we took that to heart, and he made it his mission to try to kill me in my training for the Boston Marathon. And I came out the other side stronger than ever. And we're kind of just rinsing and repeating that process for the Chicago Marathon. And I honestly feel better. I even feel better this build. Like obviously we've got 34 days as we speak right now to the Chicago Marathon, but by most measures, this build has gone better than the Boston build so far. So it's encouraging. It's encouraging.
You're probably like you're right around peak week then at this point for Chicago or just past.
Yeah, I like to do like a peak 4 or 5 weeks. Like I do 4 or 5 really, really, really high intense volume, density, bury yourself in the work period, and I'm in the middle of that. So I've done 2 weeks at around 210 kilometers the last 2 weeks, and I'll do 2 more of those weeks before I start my 3-week taper into the race. So
let's nerd out a little bit on this stuff here then, because we're here, so might as well.
Yeah.
210 is your peak. What's you and your coach's philosophy on the long run?
Yeah, we've kind of tinkered with this a little bit. This build, we've been focusing more on like density of training than ever before. Basically, I've learned that my best skill set is that I can almost like on demand recover and show up and do another good session really quickly, even at altitude, which is the hardest part about training at altitude, is recovering between sessions. So I'm doing weeks of training where the density is really, really high. The volume is high and the density is high. What I mean by that is I'm trying to go hard as frequently as I can within the confines of like a 6 to 7 day period. There will be weeks where, if you wanted to look at it on paper, 4 out of the 7 days are like quality days, which is pretty insane for anywhere, but also especially if you consider the altitude we're training at, because recovery is hampered at altitude. That's part of the appeal and the growth of training at altitude, is that it's harder for your body to do everything, so your body adapts and grows. So this build has been more about finding those lines and riding them, and I had a couple really, really big weeks coming off that half marathon in Edmonton. Since I've been back, I've been throwing a lot of crap at the wall and seeing what can happen, and I've yet to fall flat. I've had either B days or A days all the way through, which has been really fun. And my energy seems really good. And, I took my first day off in like 40 something days yesterday. So I did my 210 kilometer week in 6 days last week, which was huge for me. So I took Sunday completely off and feeling ready for another 2 weeks of really hard training before I can kind of let off the gas a little bit. But yeah, I had my best session on Saturday of the block by far. And it was just really, really encouraging to kind of just, in the midst of all the fatigue and all the volume, to be able to still run paces at altitude that I need to run at sea level and need to feel good running at sea level. But doing it up here gives me a lot of confidence.
Let's talk a little bit about your coach for a second here. You work with John Green. We ran into you in the springtime. Like you guys were hanging out on Newberry Street, just like sitting on a street corner on, I think it was the Saturday afternoon, the sun was out. and you guys were just like hanging out chatting, and we bumped into you, and you're like, yeah, we're just talking out the race plan right now. Guy's young, John Green.
He's only a year older than me.
Wow. Okay. So, I mean, the obvious question that comes to mind is like, when you think coach, you think the grizzled old veteran, like the man or woman with the whistle and the clipboard, and they ran the 2000 Sydney Olympic marathon or whatever, and they've got all this experience and they've coached track for a million years and whatever. And you're working with your peer. You're working with somebody that you share a lot in common with in terms of like where you are in life and whatnot. So how is it that you chose John? And how is it that it's working really well, obviously. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic between you.
Yeah, I chose him because I live in Flagstaff, and he honestly was the first name that came to mind after the Olympics last year when my coach at the time, Ryan Hall, stepped away from coaching. I wanted an in-person coach here in Flagstaff, and even though Flagstaff is the mecca, if you're not associated with a brand that has a sponsored coach, like we have an Under Armour group, we have a Hoka group here, we have a Nike group here now.
Yeah.
I'm not sponsored by any of those, so that automatically crosses off 3 coaches off my list of potential prospects unless I was going to change sponsors. So I kind of, by the process of elimination, looked at it and was like, well, I'll talk to this John Green guy. I like him. I've talked to him before, and I've always been impressed with the energy I see him pour into his athletes. I remember seeing him work with Molly Seidel over the course of the years, and he seems to do everything for her. Like, just be there for everything, be so invested in her success, and care so deeply. And I feel like that was a huge plus for him. And I knew a little bit about his training philosophy because of Molly's success. Molly posted everything on Strava, so I kind of knew, okay, this guy's like, he's a double T, high volume, like let you do the work kind of coach. And I've always thrived under coaches that don't try to over control the athlete, but instead try to like let the athlete be the best version of themselves. And it became apparent after sitting down with him and after working with him. We did a trial period going into New York. It was kind of like a dating period of sorts. And it became super clear to me that we were going to have good chemistry because he was going to let me be me, and he was going to guide me, but not, hold me back. And that seems like a weird way to phrase it, but I've always felt like certain coaches have all these like preconceived notions, but his youth and his inexperience is actually something that I think is a huge plus for him because he's not set in one way or stuck in something. He's more willing to always adapt and listen and hear, and his ego isn't huge in coaching. Like, he believes he's a great coach and he believes in what he does, and he has sound principles and philosophy guiding what we're doing, but he's just a sound mind and a good friend and someone who cares deeply about people he works with.
Yeah, I recall seeing on Instagram like he was changing a tire for Molly Seidel on her Instagram at one point. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's a coach who's involved in your life, right?
He recently helped weld my new mailbox in front of my house. He's a man of he's like a handyman. He can do almost anything. Like, he grew up, his parents own a hardware store in Boston, so he's kind of like the do-it-all guy, DIY. And he'll do anything for his athletes. Like, he's definitely willing and able to help out in every capacity of life.
And I've noticed from your Instagram, like he's out on the bike, he's riding along on long runs and big efforts with you as well. That dynamic, how important is that to have your coach there, like in person?
I couldn't do it without it. I like to, even in the middle of workouts, just use sounding boards constantly. Like, we do double threshold a lot, and the way we do it, it's kind of funny. A lot of people will like join us for double threshold because it's like a pretty common staple for a lot of people's training. So they'll be like, oh, you're doing double T? Like, I'll hop in, and they'll show up for the warm up. They're like, oh, what are you doing today? I'm like, I don't know. Find out after the warm up. We'll see. Probably something like this. And we'll finish the warm up, and I'll be like, what do you want me to do today? He goes, why don't you start with a 2 mile? And I'll be like, all right, I'll do that. And then I do it, and then it's like, he's like, do you want to do another one of those, or do you want to cut it down? And it's like we're like pushing and pulling in the moment. So if he's not there, then that takes that like art of coaching in person out of the equation. And I really value that. We had a workout last week. Again, I'm going to use double threshold as an example, but we're taking lactate readings. He's looking at the data in real time, and we're trying to make decisions on how many reps to do, how much volume to do, how long should the reps be, but we're doing it in live time, like 60 seconds rest between reps, and then he's sending me out telling me what to do, right? So that's pretty cool that he's like, in that moment, we're making a critical decision under the duress of, hey, you're starting your next rep in 40 seconds, go.
So yeah, it's nice. You teed me up for the segue here. Talk a little science and then a bit of business here. So you just mentioned taking lactate levels. How much are you leaning on science and data in this last year in terms of like figuring out your marathon build? How much is too much? What's too little? How to get the sweet spots? How to peak? How long should I taper for? How much are you using sports science?
That's a good question, because I have the data. We take the data, we look at the data, but I think at the end of the day, we're still going to always lean on like, we need to run these paces, we need to run this hard, we need to train this hard. It's just when the data is good, it's encouraging, right? Like, I don't think I would have changed my workout significantly with different lactate readings last week. We tweaked just a touch when we got the information, and I'll just say like simply like last week when I was doing this double threshold, I was getting lower readings than I usually do. So for the first time ever, John's like, why don't you speed up? Like, let's see if we can like find the right level of lactate. So I'm that was like the first time he's ever told me to speed up because of my lactate readings. He's told me to slow down before, not like crazy, right? But that was the first time, and I was running basically. I almost run the same pace every time I do this workout. There's not that much change. Like the variation of pace is probably less than 5 seconds, plus minus whatever for a mile. Let's use a mile as a round number. Say I'm gonna run 4:55 miles. Probably won't run faster than 4:50. Probably won't run slower than 5 minutes. And it's almost everything's in that plus minus 5 second range, except for last week where we're getting really low readings and we're like, let's run 440s. Let's see if we can figure this out. And so the science is always there, but at the end of the day, when you're training for marathoning, it's almost like if you know you're going to have to run X pace, then you want to get pretty good at running that pace. So we're going to prioritize pace work over following the exact science of, oh, well, the science says you want to stay right here on this lactate reading. If we're 4.5 when we're striving for 4.0 blood lactate, we're not going to slow down because we're 4.5. Just going to take that data and just like be like, okay, whatever. But I also am constantly monitoring heart rate. I have a pretty good idea of what I can run at for a full marathon. I've worn my heart rate monitor in like all of my last like 5 or 6 marathons, so I have a lot of really good raw data of like what I can actually do in a marathon. So it's really encouraging when I'm doing a workout like I did on Saturday and my heart rate never got above what it did at Boston, for example, and I'm feeling in control and I'm running fast paces or whatnot. So the data's there, but at the end of the day, I find marathoning to be more of an art than a science. You got to feel it, you got to know it, you got to trust it. It's almost like you walk by faith, not by sight in the marathon. You got to understand what your body can and can't do. And just be a little bit more dialed into the internal signals.
Before we pivot into business, that got me thinking about the mind, about the mental element of it. The marathon is the ultimate mental, psychological, emotional battle and conversation with the self. That last 10 kilometers of the marathon is a unique, at times beautiful, wonderful headspace, at times crushing and overwhelming, depending on how the race is going.
Yep.
How do you mentally prepare for a marathon? Are you a big visualizing guy? Are you a mantra guy? Like what are your tactics to get the head right for the marathon day?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think I have just learned all the false flags of a marathon. So here's what I mean by that is in the days leading up, you're going to have a moment where you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why did I sign up for this? I don't want to do this. This is going to suck. What if I get out there and my legs stop working? You know, the classic nightmare, you're stuck in mud kind of feeling. Like those thoughts are going to happen. And for me, realizing that that's just part of the game now, I think the first few marathons of my career, it was hard. It was so hard to even get to the line without like all the battles of race week, of the night before, the days leading in. Now it's so cyclical. It's so predictable. It's like almost like, oh, hey there, old friend. I've seen you before. I know you self-doubt. I know you, you know, freaking out thinking you might be catching a cold 3 days out because you feel like a slight warmth on your forehead. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing that I'm not going to be aware of as part of the game at this point. So for me, it's not so much of like mantras or step by step, like this is how I get right, as much as it is just like, I've been here, I've done that. There's nothing new presented to me. I've been in the middle of a marathon and thought I'm going to have to drop out, or, oh, my stomach hurts, or, oh, I got a cramp, or like all of these scenarios that are very real and very likely and very possible have been worked out in training and in racing throughout my career now, to the point where, yeah, sure, do I freak out in the moment for a second? In New York, for example, I remember at like a 10 or 11K, horrible side stitch, horrible. I was in the front of the group, got just like the most sharp abdominal side stitch. I fell to the back. I almost fell off. Like I got to the point where I was in the very back of this group, and I was thinking, if this persists for another K, I'm out. I'm going to be dropped and my race will be over. But I persisted. It went away. I moved back up. I was fine. Another example was, in Boston, 8K, 10K in, similar, like pretty early in the race, I was like, if I keep running this pace, I am not going to be able to finish this race. This is way too fast. We're running at a pace that there's no chance I can sustain this for 42K. There's no way. Pace lets up just a touch, just a hair. I relax, I settle in, I'm fine. So it's really just knowing that these mental hurdles are a part of the business, and just knowing how to identify them and call them out for what they are, which is a load of crap usually.
Do you think about, you mentioned before off the top about how money is a factor. It's a reality. You are self-employed. You are your own business. You are your own brand. And that's a brand you've got to build, you've got to cultivate, you've got to maintain. Think about that when you're running a marathon. Does that ever creep into your mind? Like you just described a situation there where if you fall off, you're in danger of irrelevance, right?
Yeah.
If you drop off and you finish 20th in Boston, you become an afterthought in terms of like the social media buzz and the elite talk and the let's run chatter and whatever. Do you think about that at all?
Absolutely. The running world is the cruelest in a lot of ways. It does not care unless you're super duper star. You have no leash. If you have a bad race, you're forgotten. You're not talked about. If you run a good race, you're praised for a day and then people forget about it. And you're hot until you're not, and you're good until the next guy comes. Everyone's ready to replace you. It is very, very fleeting. And to stay relevant, to stay important, to stay basically monetizable, to be front and center, and to make money in this sport, you have to produce. You have to you have to have meaningful results regularly, and you have to be in the forefront of people's minds, and you have to be consistent. There's a lot of pressure, and what I've realized as I've gotten further along is that I I'm just mature enough now to like enjoy that pressure and relish in it, and see it as an opportunity, see it as a really cool thing. When I was younger, I think I was just as talented as I am now. I've definitely developed and I've gotten stronger and I've gotten better at what I do. But I think the biggest difference between what I was doing a couple of years ago and what I'm doing now is that I'm mature enough to be excited about the pressure instead of be worried about it and think, oh my gosh, what if I fail? Like, what's going to happen? And as I step up to the plate here in 5 weeks in Chicago, there's a real possibility that if you put your neck out there enough that you fall flat on your face. And there's going to be a moment in that race, I know it's going to happen, where I'm going to think, what did I do? Why did I want to go out this fast? Why did I want to put myself in this position to have to try something so hard? I could have taken a much easier path here. Why didn't I go out in 2:07 pace? Why didn't I go out and, you know what I mean? Like there's going to be all these questions. And at the end of the day, I'm going to know that that's just part of the game, and that I can work through it. And that by being bold and by being brave and by trying scary things and by being my most authentic, true self, I'm bolstering my brand, and I'm giving myself an opportunity to do something special and to make a really good living in a sport that a lot of people don't. And I think I have more control over the marketability and the financial business side of this sport than people want to admit that they have control over. Like, a lot of people will pretend like they don't have any say in it, and they're just a victim of circumstance and of the industry or this or that. But every time I've tried to increase my value, I've tried to do things that I've bet on myself and I've pushed the envelope here or there, I've been rewarded. So I just think that we have way more control over this stuff than we want to admit.
I spoke at length with Clayton Young before Boston, in Boston, and we talked, I don't know, like 45 minutes about the business, because he's obviously taken his own career path from a business perspective in his own hands, quite literally. Fired his agent, or parted ways with his agent would probably be a nicer way of saying it, because he had nothing but nice things to say about his former agent, but took on his own business prospects as a brand, as a runner, as an athlete. And he's really focused on content creation. He's basically his own executive producer of his docuseries, and he's thinking very much about how he's building his own brand and how he's telling his story. You're obviously curious about this stuff. You've got a great social media presence. How much time are you devoting to that? And how important is that these days for an athlete?
It's definitely important. It's as important as ever, and it'll continue to be important. I like to use the analogy that if a tree falls in the forest and no one's around, did it make a sound, right? We don't have a league that promotes us like the NBA or the NFL or the NHL or whatnot will promote their athletes and their content, because there's not this mega production company that needs the eyes and the ears and everything on it at all times. World Athletics is like a government organization, more or less. It's not really like, they're not in the business of truly making money and promoting their sport like, say, the NHL would be or the NFL would be. So it falls on the athletes, and you'll see this in other sports too. Even those sports, those athletes are taking business matters into their own hands more than ever. And I think fortune favors the bold, for sure. And there's a lot of this fear in the running world that if you put yourself out there, that if you do these other things, that you're not really about the important stuff. You're not about the business of the grind of the purest side of the sport. Running loves its amateur roots. It loves its blue collar-esque attitude, and self-promotion is not a blue collar trait. But if we want to be more than a blue collar sport with some nice, cool, rugged, stories to tell between our friends or at run club or whatnot, if we want to transcend our sport in any way, I think we have to get over this preconceived notion that humility and working in silence and letting your legs do the talking is all that matters. We need to push that aside and say, no, I need to make myself as interesting as possible to as many people as possible, and get my brands that represent me, that I represent, that I promote, that are promoting me and helping me, out in front of as many people as possible, so that they go at the end of a term sheet, beginning of negotiation for the next contract, they go, we can't afford not to bring Rory back or bring Clayton Young back in that case, because what they bring is much greater than a 2:07 marathon at Boston. It's beyond one day of the year or 2 days of the year. If we're talking marathons, 3 days maybe, it has to be beyond that. And I've thought that since I was in university. I've thought that for a long time, and I'm still learning how to do it to the best of my abilities. But it is a unique, cool thing that I am taking on every day, and I'm trying to thread the needle, right? Like, I want to not have it dominate my life, but not have it not be a part of my life. I look at everything I do as part of a job, and this is just part of the job.
You've been working with Puma for a few years now, and Puma's made big efforts in the last few years to get back into the distance running game in a big way. I think historically, obviously, the relationship with Usain Bolt and sprinting is there. And they've come and gone with distance running, with the marathon, many times over their long history. But in the last few years, credit to them. They've done a lot to make good products, and they arguably have the fastest shoe in the world right now. I'll give you an opportunity here to show some love to Puma. What's it been like working with Puma? How did you make the decision to come on board with them a few years ago, and what's that dynamic been like?
Yeah, so I've been with Puma since 2022. I signed with them in like April or May of 2022. And so most of 2022, all of 23, all of 24, and now most of 25. So I'm almost at 4 years with the brand. And I decided to join them basically because it was the best option I had at the time by far. And I did like what they were doing, and I was excited about, here's this major brand that has legs in all of these different sports. Like, they're a soccer brand, they're a basketball brand, they're big in F1, they're in all of these areas of sport, and they're they're on paper the third largest sport company in the world, behind only Nike and Adidas. And that's exciting to me. And then when I saw how much they seemed to be in on trying to make running work, it's different than, say, Reebok a few years ago. Reebok had like a splash, but it was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out the door. This kind of felt like Puma cannonballed into the deep end of the pool, and they were like, let's see what we can do. And at the time, I think I was the second North American based marathoner that they signed. So I think that Pat Tiernan joined a couple months before me, and then I joined, and I think we were the first two North American based marathoners. And if I'm not mistaken, there might have only been a few in Europe too at the time, like 2 or 3. Yeah. So I'm one of 5 male marathoners on their entire roster. And I take a lot of pride in being an early adopter of this brand. And I think this brand has grown in just my short time with them by a lot. And the product was good when I joined. That's why I joined. I could tell that they were on to something. And I could tell that they were dedicated to continuing to push forward, and they seem to be on the fastest end of production that I've ever seen in my time in the business. Like, they're always working on the next thing. They're like, when the Fast R3 comes out, they're already working on the Fast R4 or whatever, right? Like, that's how they've been since I've joined the company. And they include athletes into that pool of discussion, and I have a good relationship with product line managers and all sorts of people from their European office to their North American office. And I'm really stoked that I'm with them, and I will be with them for the foreseeable future. I have a couple years left on my term right now, and I believe, based on my relationship right now, that we'll keep extending this thing out as long as I'm relevant, as long as they're still in the game. I expect to be a part of their picture. So yeah, it's really, really exciting, and I would love to follow them into the top of the sport and be a part of the reason why they get there. And I think Boston was the first time in my career that I felt like I actually made like a huge sports marketing impact, because the Fast R3's release was that weekend, and my performance was the best performance on the day in the shoe, and it turned a lot of heads. And there was the Project 3, there was a lot of things going into that. It was a sports marketing dream come true. It was, we have the product, we have the timing, we have the performance, and everything kind of came together at once. And it's really hard to define ROI in running, because it's like, how many people are buying shoes because I wore them at the Boston Marathon? And I think this time it was actually somewhat of a real head turner. And I think that goes to show that sports marketing does matter. And when timed right, it can be really, really powerful. And I think other companies have done that really well in the last several years. But what Puma did at Boston and London, for that matter, was just masterful.
Yeah. So do you talk a little bit about shoes? Are you a shoe nerd? Are you a guy who's giving them feedback and talking about what they should be tweaking for the next version for the Fast R4? Are you getting prototypes and testing them in workouts and that sort of thing? Like, how involved in this whole process are you? How interested in this process are you?
Yeah, so I am a shoe nerd. I worked in run specialty in high school and in college. So I have a background in the shoe side of the world, and I do love shoes. I love what other brands are doing. I love what Puma's doing. I'm always aware of what's happening, and I kind of have my finger on the pulse a little bit. And I think I know what matters in the super shoe game, and I think I have a good grasp on what works and what doesn't. And I am lucky enough to be sample size, so I do get a lot of prototypes. So it has been a really cool relationship. Like I said, I have a close relationship with the product line manager at Puma, and we're able to, I can try a prototype and shoot him a text and be like, loved this was cool, I don't know about this, that, or the other, right? Like, I'm not like a super critical shoe wearer. I'm mostly like thumbs up unless something's egregious. But yeah. I feel like I had the ability to say, like, okay, this shoe's different. This shoe is special. This shoe feels unique in the space. And that was our impression of Fast R3 was, wow, this shoe is surprisingly light, surprisingly responsive, surprisingly bouncy, like a lot of good, ping words in the super shoe world. You want light, you want responsive, you want bouncy. These are the things that people notice in a super shoe. So it kind of checked a lot of boxes from the jump.
So you said moments ago that you know what makes for a good super shoe. What are the ingredients you think?
Like buzzwords would be like propulsion. Like, you want to feel like the shoe pushes you into the next step. Every time you're hitting the ground, you're encouraged to pop that foot off the ground and go again. And it's boom, 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 boom. You put force in, you get force out, instead of your body absorbing all that force and having to create that force on its own. So it's like, a good shoe allows for someone like myself, who I consider to be like a power marathon runner, like someone who has a good amount of force put into the ground with every step. Maybe I don't have the most like beautiful, perfect running economy when someone watches me move, but I've got a lot of good things going for me that this shoe can help bring out and highlight the strengths of me as a runner. And yeah, I think propulsion is the number one thing. Like, you want this shoe to feel like it's jumping back off the pavement with every step. And then comfort, like, you're going to run 42K in this shoe. You want it to feel good on the back end, and you want it to feel fast. You want it to feel like light and breathable and all of the little things. And that's what the Fast R3 did that no other super shoe that I've seen has been able to do, which is create a shoe that feels ridiculously light while still being very bouncy and very springy. it's really like a good blend.
So you mentioned before that in running, especially in distance running, especially the marathon, there isn't really a league. I mean, there's the World Marathon Majors. That's a very informal thing. But it is a little bit every man and every woman for themselves. I can't help but to ask you about your take on Grand Slam track league. You've got some friends and colleagues, I'm sure, who have competed, and we're now in this sort of gray area. What's your take on what has happened, and what's your thoughts about the future of this sort of a concept? Because it feels like it was going somewhere, and then this potential failure could be really damaging to the future trajectory of where that was going.
Absolutely. I don't think Michael Johnson and the Grand Slam track will like rear its head again. Like, I think that's almost like such a damning and terrible thing that happened that they would need a savior to save that league, right? Like, they would need some sort of uber wealthy person to drop $30 million into Michael Johnson's hand and have him do right by every athlete he wronged, and then have someone still saying, like, we liked the concept, let's move forward. And I think that the shortcomings and he basically like ran a league off of like empty promises from investors, and that's just a weird way. Like, if you don't have money in hand, don't act like you have money in hand. It's just like bad business 101. It's like you didn't have the money to run the operation, and you were acting as if you were going to have the money without any guarantees. And so it's damning in a lot of ways. I think that the concept of, if someone could, in theory, bring an influx of cash of that size into running, it would change the industry for good. And if it can make the stakes feel a lot higher than they are. Just like someone was like, I remember I talked about how when I was watching the first Grand Slam, like how crazy it was going to be to watch people race for $100,000 in like a one-off meet, right? And I think it was somebody at Canadian Running or something commented, do you actually care what people are racing for? Like, does that really impact how good of a race it is? I said, absolutely. Like, this is life-changing money for these people. Like, if I'm racing for $100,000 versus $5,000, I am going to go to a much deeper, darker place for $100,000. And it's not because I didn't want it bad enough for its own purest form. And, it's not because it's all about the money. It's just because that kind of money changes people's lives. That's a real amount of money. And it changes who's going to step to the plate and how they're going to approach the race, because there's real stakes. Stakes matter in sports.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's so important. So, I mean, I would love to see more races where the stakes feel so high, and it's really hard to create stakes without the Olympics, without world championships, without majors. So to think that we were going to throw a new thing into the ring and it would immediately have stakes just because of money, that was cool. And I hope that something like it can come. I hope that road racing can find its version of that. And I would love to see just races where you could see people running for substantial, life-changing amounts of, like, wow, if this guy wins this race, like, he might buy a house. Like, that's real. Yeah. Like, that's different than just like, oh, he might be able to stay in the sport for 6 more months, right? Like we're talking about two different like leagues of looking through the lens of what sport can be. And there's a lot of runners that make really good money. That's the thing, is like there's this misconception that it's full of all these like people that don't make money in the sport, and that it's an amateur sport in nature. But I have plenty of running friends that are objectively wealthy, and there is money in the sport. It's just being funneled through all these different channels, and we don't know all the details. So it was going to be nice to have it be like apparent and be obvious and be clear. Like, hey, guy won 3 Grand Slams this year. We know he made at least $300,000. That was going to be cool. So hopefully something gets figured out and we can have something like that in the future.
do you and your colleagues in in the road running circuit, do you ever talk about that sort of thing? You ever have like this, like, wouldn't it be awesome if we had a league? If we had like the NBA of running?
Road running, we don't talk about it as much because if you're in the higher echelon of road racing, you're probably doing well enough that you're not that concerned about it. Obviously, like, I think league-based running would be a great idea, like a season, a pool of like meaningful races that lead to a championship, like a regular season, a postseason, some sort of team dynamic. There's a lot of cool ideas that could be built on that I wish could happen. But again, the only way these things happen is if someone with enough money to fund it just throws it at it. And without proof of concept, that's unlikely. But it's hard. It would be really cool to say like, hey, let's make a 5-race series, 4 regular season, 1 championship race, high stakes, same people at every race, building points, kind of like how NASCAR F1, like how you have like regular season points that lead into a postseason and I feel like there's no reason why running shouldn't have that, but because we don't have a collective, we don't have a collective bargaining agreement, we don't have a union, we don't have a governing body, it's really hard to pool us all in one place. And so we're kind of all just going where we're going to get fed. And it's different for depending on which country you're from, depending on where you live. There's so many factors in the profitability of an athlete in this landscape. It's crazy.
Who's the most interesting person in running to you?
All events, all disciplines, track and field,
Anybody. Well, you pick a marathoner, then anybody overall.
Marathoner, I will say, because I have a vested interest because of our stories kind of being intertwined, I think Connor Mance has the potential to be the most interesting story in the sport, because I do think he's David and he has many Goliaths to slay in a lot of ways. And I think he is the first person in a long time that I'm like, I mean, if you gave me plus odds to bet will Connor Mance ever win a major, I'll take it, because I think that there's a good chance with his talent, with his tenacious race style, and with how good he is that one day he's going to be a Boston Marathon champ or a Chicago Marathon champ or something like that. And I think that's intriguing. I love seeing an underdog. I like seeing, like, I don't want it to be about East Africans versus the rest, but it kind of can feel that way because of their dominance. It kind of feels like these underdogs, like it's what's exciting to me is these people with that come from a background similar to mine. Like I was college teammates with Connor Mance. Like this is a different thing. So I would say it's very interesting because of his talent alone and because of his style and how good he is. I think that he's the most intriguing next 5 years at least.
Why the heck are Mormons so good at marathon running?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think that Utah is like this weird hotbed for running, and that's really the answer, is that there's a good kind of culture cultivating some success there. But I mean, really, if you just look at it, North America, I like to group North America because I like to throw Canada into the equation, is kind of having a moment in distance running and in resurgence and in relevance. So, Marco Arope is obviously one of the best 800 runners in the world. Mohamed has been on the podium at multiple global championships. Cam Levins is a 205 marathoner. There's plenty of talent going around on this continent alone, and I think it's kind of having just a moment. And even Europe is having a moment, and I think it's more interesting if it's not just a race of Kenyans and Ethiopians for gold, silver, and bronze. I think it's more interesting to see a group of people from all sorts of countries battling it out.
What do you think of the doping situation? Obviously, Ruth Chepngetich in Chicago last year. from the inside as an elite athlete, that must be even more gutting than it is, as from my perspective as a fan of the sport, that it's like it's potentially like terminal. Like it hurts the sport in a way that is not even yet fully felt, I think. What do you think should be done about doping? It's sort of like this. I know it's I'm asking you a lot of grand questions here, but
Yeah.
as an athlete, are you a no tolerance person? What's your thoughts on the situation with doping right now? Are you looking to the guy next to you at the start line at a major and thinking to yourself, like, is this guy doping? And is in 5 years, am I going to find out that he was doping and he cost me 10 grand and a podium spot or whatever?
Yeah, so I haven't been good enough to feel robbed yet. So ask
You're getting
me
there.
if I get fourth place at a major and I have a doubt that one of the top 3 people were doping, that's when I'm going to get really, really pissed off, because the cost of that opportunity is so big. I am a optimist by nature. I believe people are innocent until proven guilty for the most part, unless there's overwhelming evidence to suggest otherwise, right? Like, I want to believe people are clean. And I'll give you, because it's become a little bit of this xenophobic conversation of, is it just, you just think they're cheating because they're African? I don't think that. I think John Career is a clean athlete until I get presented with data or information that steers me the other way. Here's why I think he's clean, and here's why I did not for 1 second believe Ruth Chepngetich was clean when she ran the time. I didn't believe it for a second. When it was told to me, my initial reaction was, that's bullshit. No way. And here's why. You are only as good in this sport as the company you keep. That is the important thing. So when there's overwhelming support that certain company is associated with certain behavior, and then a performance is unbelievable, I am going to connect some dots. And Federico Rosa, the agent that represents Ruth Chepngetich, that has represented many convicted dopers before, there's just too much consistent disappointments. From now on, if a Rosa athlete does something that seems unbelievable, my default is that's not believable. And I wish more races would take the stance of, like, we're not going to work with this guy anymore. I wish more athletes would leave that to take a stance of, like, I don't want to be associated with this. I can't believe if you're a clean athlete running under him, why would you want to stay with him just under the umbrella of suspicion? It's like when Mo Farah left Alberto Salazar NOP and went and found something different because he didn't even want to be associated with the umbrella of suspicion. Even if there was no foul play, if I'm a clean athlete, I don't want to be in a situation where I am even looked at as potentially being dirty, because I don't want that cloud of judgment on me. So to me, it's just too damning, right? Like, it's just too much. John Career has my agent. He's got Howie Keflezighi as an agent, who I think is as straight of a shooter as they come. He's coached by Ron Mann, former NAU coach. Seems like a clean guy, and I have all the reason to believe him because I know him. And there's this unknown factor. And also with John Career, like, I've seen him fail. And none of his performances have jumped off as, like, that seems too good to be true. And I'm not saying if he breaks the world record in Chicago that he's automatically now in this cloud of suspicion, because I actually don't believe you have to dope to get a world record. That's not my opinion. That's some people's opinions in this sport. I think clean athletes can do remarkable things. I just think that there's enough bad apples out there that it makes it really hard to decipher. But I will always believe in people being honest and true until they give me a reason to believe otherwise.
Let's end on a positive note here. Going into Chicago, you've got some bold ambitions. You are Canadian-American or American-Canadian. I'm not sure which nation comes first in your mind.
Well, I was born in Canada and I became an American citizen in 2020. So definitely Canadian-American first.
You're a Canadian-American, and conveniently for you, the North American record overall is owned by a Canadian. So you get to take the whole thing out if you run the fastest time. Certainly, if you run ahead of your pal Connor Mance in Chicago, which will be, I imagine, a tall order for both of you. You got to make about 90-second jump from where you were at in Boston. Although some will say that the Boston Marathon course is so challenging, it's so difficult. Everyone likes to say, like, hey, I ran my Boston PR and my overall PR, and they're like, the Boston one is even almost more impressive, especially if it's close to and it is your straight PR. So for you going into Chicago, is it North American record or Boston? Are you going 205, like say 205.30 type pace from the jump? Are you guys putting yourselves in that? Have you talked to Connor about it? Is this something where you're going to run together? Are you going to get pacers? Tell me what you imagine Chicago is going to be like.
So I know Connor well enough to talk to him, and I do talk to him, and I have asked him like what his thoughts are. And here's my only fear, and the only thing that I'm not sure about is, one, these pace jobs aren't declared until the night or 2 nights before. It's crazy. So they won't. Yeah. It's not like we're going to be like, okay, the pace is 102, 30 through halfway. Pacer going 30K. That could be this situation. Yeah. But if Connor Mance the night before or 2 nights before or 3 weeks before gets this itch, like, I think I can run 204. I think I can go 204 flat. He has the power to dictate the terms.
Yes, especially Chicago, because Nike athlete,
American.
Nike is American, Chicago is Nike event.
In a lot of ways, I'm at the mercy of whatever Connor Mance feels is best for himself. And so with that being said, I went into Boston with like a hard ceiling, hard cap on, I know I can go out this fast and not die. I said that pace was 62 flat at Boston, and I went out in 61.55. So, like, in some ways, that gave me confidence that I can kind of throw caution to the wind to some extent. I'm not going to go out there and try to run 203 pace for half of the race and think that that's my best shot at the record. But I do know in Chicago, bodies are going to matter. So I don't want to run alone. So I will place a premium on running with people, even if it means running ahead of myself and potentially blowing up and risking having a really, really rough day. I think going for it is admirable, and I want to do that. And I hope over the next few weeks, I'm able to gather enough data and gather enough confidence and build off of my Boston performance to say, like, okay, I've got wiggle room. Because what I don't want is to be on a razor's edge where if we go 10 seconds too fast, I'm screwed. That if I'm going out in the race knowing that I'm screwed if we go a little too fast, I've already lost. I have to be fit enough for margin of error. There has to be enough wiggle room in my plan that I'm not freaking out if we're 62 flat. If we're 62 flat at halfway, I have to be calm and relaxed under that duress. Like, I have to know I can survive that. So in my mind, I'm going to play kind of like this premium card on running with Connor as long as physically possible. I have a lot of respect for him as an athlete. I've seen his training. I've seen his recent race results. He's very, very fit. I know what I'm capable of. I know where I'm at. I know that I am a good marathoner and that I can pull some special stuff out of my hat, so to speak, on race day. And it's going to be a battle of will, and it's going to be a game time decision, and we're going to have to see. So I will not run 26.2 miles, 42K alone, though. I will not do that. So I will way rather let it fly with Connor Mance or whatnot than try to be like this pace savvy hero and run 62.47 on both sides.
Last one for you. You're someone who clearly has a lot of ambition, who dreams big, and who has no fear in stating what those ambitions and those dreams are. And you said earlier in our conversation that for a long time the Olympics was the big focus, and you achieved that goal. What now at this stage in your life? What's just overall, anything at all? What's your biggest ambition, your biggest dream, your biggest desire right now for the future for yourself?
I want to get good enough at the marathon that I can enter any race with some ounce of, whether it be deserved or foolish ambition, that I can run to win the race. Now, do I think I'm going to go win every major or win a gold medal at the Olympics? No. I think that is a ginormous mountain to climb, but I want to be able to race as if it's in the realm of possibilities. I want to get good enough at this sport, at the art of the marathon, that I can enter the Chicago Marathon or the Boston Marathon or the Olympic Marathon and just say, I can race with these guys. I don't have to pace it. I don't have to be smarter. I don't have to run this weird finagle mental gymnastics of here's my algorithm of how I end up backdooring third place, right? I just want to be able to go into a race and focus on competing and be good enough to compete with everybody. There's always going to be somebody that is better than me. There's always going to be somebody that has more talent than me, that has this on me, that has the PBs, the track times, the half marathon, this, that, or the other. I've under no illusion that one day I'm going to be the best in the world. There's no illusion of that. I know that that's reserved for people that are very, 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 very top of the end, tip of the spear talent. I just want to be able to line up on a start line and say, anything can happen for me today. Let's see what happens. Let's throw my name in the ring and throw punches and be willing to go toe to toe with anyone. And yeah, by LA, my goal is to be in the race. Be in the race. Not win the race, not promise some medal to my home country or this, that, or the other. It's just, can I be in this race? And can I be in every race that I line up in for the rest of my career? And I'm going to be aspiring for that level of fitness and that level of progression in my career until I'm there.
Rory Linkletter, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much to Rory for being so generous with his time right in the thick of his training. Thanks to his wife, Jill, who also provided me with tons of insight and background on Rory for the conversation, and his coach, John Green, as well, who did the same. And make sure to follow everything that we're doing. We are going to be live in Chicago. We're going to do a pretty intimate little live recording of the podcast. If you're interested in getting a ticket for that and joining us, it's totally free. Just email us at podcast@marathonhandbook.com, and we will make sure to put you on the list to let you know the exact dates and locations. I think we've got a space booked in the Fine Arts Building on Michigan Ave, which is very close to the start-finish line area of the marathon itself. So it's nicely and centrally located. It's going to be on Friday at some point. We're also going to do a shakeout run. Again, this is the low-key, intimate type experience. We're just going to go for an easy run. We're going to position it, I think, in the morning on Friday. We haven't locked that in yet. But again, just email us, podcast@marathonhandbook.com. And also keep an eye out on our Instagram. We're going to post a schedule of everything we're up to, both in Chicago and this fall. We're going to do a whole lot around the Toronto Waterfront Marathon this time around. We partnered with them and ASICS to do a bunch of content coverage there. It's going to be super fun. So if you're going to be in Toronto, let us know. We're going to New York. Also, we're doing a huge amount of stuff for New York. And we're going to do a live watch-along show for both Chicago and New York. So subscribe to our YouTube channels for those as well. All right. Thanks for watching and listening. And hopefully we'll see you in Chicago.